So I'm sitting here with Ant Middleton. Thank you for taking your time to share some of your stories. Why don't you briefly introduce yourself to start?
Yeah, I'm Ant Middleton. I'm a TV personality now, which sounds pretty bizarre compared to my other career, which was in the Special Boat Service in the United Kingdom Special Forces, sort of living in the shadows, and now I live in the limelight. So quite an interesting career change, shall we say, but an exciting one.
Right, so basically the resilience you built to deal with difficult situations, particularly also emotionally difficult situations, was in a way for you also a series of chances. Is there any any advice you'd have for people who do not aim to go or don't have the chance to go down a military training track? Because to build resilience on a level where they can take a lot of things and most things that life would sooner or later throw at them.
I think with resilience, it's not being afraid of failure, not being afraid of fear, and ultimately challenging that. Ultimately learning from it and exposing yourself to hardship, to suffering, to adversity. That's where resilience is built up from. It doesn't have to be through a military program. It has to just through everyday life. But ultimately, it's about identifying that situation, taking ownership of it, holding yourself accountable, and tackling it face on. A lot of people shy away, or they have the easy option and they choose the easy option, and therefore you will not build resilience if you do that. The easy option is something in life that's presented to us on a plate, where if you decide to step off that path and to challenge yourself, that's where you build up resilience, because ultimately you expose who you are, you expose your emotions, and you learn to deal with them. That's what resilience is. It doesn't have to be climbing Mount Everest, being in the Special Boat Service, being in the Special Forces, being in the military. It's about taking on challenges that will challenge you and test you. And I always have recommended to talk. It is the best outlet that you can do, is talk to someone. If it's too much, talk to a loved one, talk to a friend, talk to a stranger if it makes you feel better. But there's also that line of pushing people down that avenue of talking. I say to people, people say to me, "Anne, I don't want to talk." I'm like, well, how do you know if you haven't done it? So I'd always say to people, talk. Because if you don't know, you don't know what, the effects it's going to have. Lots of people, they've started talking, and it's the best thing I've ever done. Brilliant. Well, guess what? You need to keep talking. Then I'll have some people say, "Anne, I've spoken, and yeah, it's done me, but it's not really for me. I'd rather keep it in." Like I do. I do that with my father. My father's deaf from when I was 5 years old. I speak about it very rarely. Does it do me good? Not really. I prefer to hold that in. That's they're my memories. They're a few dark places that I don't want to revisit, but I manage them. The moment someone's trying to really push me into that, push, that's when I would go the other way.
And you had friends suffering from PTSD. You're not in a position where actually I need help. Please, find me someone, or actually I find somebody who can help me professionally. There's a lot of denial, first of all, and it's hard to admit. Actually, I've reached an emotional point where I can't deal with my emotions, with my trauma, and I need help. That's a hard point to reach. Often it's friends, it's family who are like, you need to do something, but then you're again pushed into that.
Yeah, of course.
And it's often well intended, mm-hmm. and sometimes it can do more harm. That just creates a lot of complexity. I think what's important is just that everybody understands and accepts that there are people out there who do need help, and if we feel that we encounter someone who does, that we encourage them, but in a benign way, in an understanding way, in a listening way.
The main mistake that I made was, this whole once a Marine, always a Marine, and it's like, and you're not in the Marines anymore. But then, well, if I'm not a Marine, who am I? well, you're just like everyone else. You've got to start somewhere, and you've got to build your way up. Well, ultimately, when you step out of a position of not only authority but of eliteness at that level, and you jump into the unknown, you think you're going to start off on this level. It's wrong. You need to don't get me wrong, you're not going to start on the bottom of the ladder. You'll probably start 2 or 3 runs up, but you're not going to start on run 10. Mm-hmm. It's a whole new sort of reality check. And that was very hard to accept. You go out and you think, right, I've earned this, right, but you need to keep earning it your whole life. You need to keep earning that run on that ladder. You need to, start somewhere. And I always say to people, no matter what career or lifestyle change you transition into, you have to start at the back of the queue. Okay? But what a lot of people do, they start at the back of the queue, and after 6 months to a year, they think they can jump out and take the shortcut because they've had such a good career before, and they take a shortcut, they get lost in and around the bazaars, and before you know it, 2-3 years later, they find their way back to the queue and they have to jump at the back of the queue again.
Let's briefly talk about your childhood again. From your book and some of the stories you've told publicly, it wasn't an easy childhood. Your father passed away when you were 5 years old, and after that, unexpectedly, your mother very quickly found another partner. You moved to a different country. That's just looking at it from the outside. Without knowing the different people in that story and the inner you, that looks like a recipe for a troubled childhood, teenagehood, and adulthood. You could have easily become one of those statistics of a violent, drunk, struggling with finding a job. How did you beat these odds? Was there a defining moment for you?
I suppose when I look back on my childhood and when I reflect back on what happened, I actually, take a positive from it. A lot of people say, "Ant, I believe that there's a positive to take from every negative."
In your book, you often talk about your demons and how if you make friends with your demons, you can leverage them to your advantage. But you never quite go into detail what those demons are. Would you share a bit?
And your demons can be something as little as temptation. Something as little as maybe doing a physical activity and you having to exercise the aggressor within you to get over that last hurdle, to get over that last hill, to get over that last obstacle, whatever it may be. And it's just about not letting that control you, but ultimately acknowledging that it's there. I'm sure sometimes everyone, you want to kick the wall, or you want to, go, oh, I want to, but you control that. You make it work for you.
And with mental health, it's a very similar. You can use that analogy. If somebody has a mental illness or is so traumatized that they're not in a position to just get stuck together, get through that, use that resilience, and I think that's the people that we shouldn't forget,
Absolutely not.
And who need that empathy and that help to get them to a point where they can walk again, and then
definitely. And there's so many of us out there that want to help, and there's so many of us that need help. And if you are in that situation, then absolutely, it's like I said, it's just like rebuilding, from your foundations. It's just, but ultimately, again, you'll only accept help if you want help. Again, it all does start with the individual. And I think with anything like this, the main message that I can deliver from this is just be honest with yourself.